Okay, in this lesson, we are going to be looking at how to find the inverse for log and exponential functions. So our essential question, what is the process for finding the inverse of a log function? And then the same question for the exponential function. So we'll just get to some examples. So remember when we did the inverse a few weeks back, the main idea for finding the inverse was just switch the x and the y. So for this first example, it's an exponential. We are going to switch the x and the y variables in the expression so that we can find our inverse. And then we're going to take this and solve for y. So that means I need to get the y out of the exponent. And this is where what we've been doing the last couple of lessons is going to come into play. We want to do the inverse of an exponential, which is a logarithm. So we're going to take the log of both sides using the same base. So it would be log base 8. And then on the right-hand side, if you have log base 8 and the exponential 8 raised to the y power, that gets the y out of the exponent. And then you just leave the left-hand side as is. So our inverse function is y equals log base 8 of x. So looking at a log expression to find the inverse, you always start the same way, switch the x and the y. So we're switching the x and the y variables. And then we're going to do the inverse of a log function, which happens to be an exponential. So we're going to exponentiate both sides. Okay, so it's 3, and we're using the same base that's on the log. So 3 raised to the log base 3y equals 3 raised to the x. And then we just simplify this left-hand side. The log base 3 and 3 are inverses of each other. So that's going to give us just the y, and we get y equals 3 to the x. So those are the basic examples for finding the inverse of a basic exponential and a basic logarithm function. Now we're going to add a little more to it. So in this case, we have another log expression, but there's a little more to it in here where we have a +4 also. And then if you had numbers on the outside, you would have to take care of those numbers as well. And I'll show you when we do the exponential how you would deal with numbers that are outside the exponential. So for this one, I want to do the inverse of the natural log. Remember, the natural log, ln, is log base e, so I'm going to use e. Whoops, I forgot a step. Okay, first we want to switch the x and the y. Remember, we're trying to find the inverse. Always switch the x and the y first. Sorry about that. Then we're going to raise it e to the x power e to the natural log of y plus 4. And then on the right-hand side, the natural log and the exponential with base e are inverses of each other. So then all we have left is the y plus 4, and then solve for y. So that means we're going to be subtracting 4 on both sides. So I have e to the x minus 4. Now make sure you're careful with this. This is a regular sized 4. Do not put it up here with the x. That would make it incorrect. This is e to the x. Okay, x is the only thing in the exponent. And then it's that whole thing minus 4. Okay, and you can even over-exaggerate it a little bit, making the x really little and making this 4 a normal size like the e. So that is our inverse function. Now let's do the inverse with this exponential. There's some stuff on the outside. Remember, before we actually start doing our calculation, we need to switch our x and y. So we'll switch the x and the y first. And then we're going to solve for y. So the first thing you want to do is get the exponential part by itself. That means I have to get rid of the 8 and get rid of the 5. So we do that the way we solve any other regular equation. Add 8 to both sides first. And you get your x plus 8. Then we divide by the 5 in the front. Okay, and simplify. So we have 7, y plus 4 equals 8 plus x divided by 5. Now we need to get the y out of the exponent. So since this is an exponential, you do the inverse, which is a log. So we're going to do a log base 7 using the same base as the exponential so that we can get the y plus 4 out of the exponent part. And over here we have log base 7 of this whole thing, x plus 8 divided by 5. You must include the parentheses around that argument. It's very important that you have those parentheses. So this is just simplified step where the log base 7 and then the exponential part are inverses, so we get y plus 4 by itself. Now I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. And again, this minus 4 stays outside of the log function. So I have log base 7 of the argument x plus 8 divided by 5. That whole thing minus 4. And this is our inverse function. So your assignment will be to do the handout, Standard 20 Lesson 3 assignment. It'll be posted on Google Classroom. If you have any questions, let me know.